Just like last year, I want to preface this video by saying that this video will cover games that I have played for the first time this year. Sometimes they take a while to get to games, but hey, better late than never, right? There will be very vague spoilers for these games. I've also randomized the order here, so don't try to guess which are my favorites based on the picture. There are 2 games on this list which will be unranked for the same reason. I didn't finish them. The first is Animal Well. I know this is Donkey's darling game and the internet seems to love it, but I just didn't really vibe with it. It's totally fine if you enjoyed it, but it personally wasn't for me, which is odd considering I typically love puzzle and Metroidvania games. I couldn't get past the first few hours of it and decided that it wasn't something that I was interested in finishing. The second is another game that I didn't finish for the exact opposite reason, Metaphor ReFantazio. I've been having a blast slowly working my way through this game. In case you couldn't tell by, well, everything on my channel, I love the Persona series. I'm about 20 hours into it at the time of writing this video, and I'm only on the second dungeon. I'm really looking forward to the rest of the game, but I felt that I couldn't honestly rank a game that I haven't beaten yet. But with those 2 out of the way, let's get to my least favorite game of 2024. Number 6, the Persona 3 Reload DLC, Episode Aigis. Ironic that I just said that I love the Persona series, and yet here it is at the bottom. I'm getting flashbacks from my list that I made last year. Episode Aigis is a lot like Persona 3 Portable. When it's good, it's fantastic. When it's bad, it's atrocious. There's really no in-between. The problem is that the good parts are really only the first and last hour of the game, and the bad is basically everything else. It took me around 20-ish hours to beat it, so that means that like 90% of the game is frustrating, meaningless grinding. The bulk of the DLC is just you running through completely irrelevant fights until you get to the end, which I will say, the last few fights are the hardest in the DLC and base game combined. Excluding secret bosses, of course. The story is really good, but it's so non-existent outside the beginning and the end. Like I said in my full review of it, it's just a bloated mess. If it had been condensed down to a 10-hour DLC, I would have been much happier. Like P3P, Episode Aigis just has too many frustrating issues to overlook, even in spite of its limited brilliance. Number 5, The Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom. I actually enjoyed Echoes of Wisdom. I know it's not really a typical Zelda game. There's no sword combat, but we do get a return to form for the dungeon design. I thought that the ecosystem was a fantastic idea, although the game felt like it overstayed its welcome a little bit. The problem is, unfortunately, due to the very foundation of the game. Combat is so heavily disincentivized that I found myself essentially ignoring enemies as much as I possibly could. It's not a good sign when a game's mechanics force you to actively avoid its systems. However, the puzzles in this game are super fun. I really enjoyed the open-ended nature of both the puzzles and the progression. I think Nintendo is starting to get a feel for how to blend the old linear style of Zelda with the freer exploration of the Breath of the Wild era. More than anything though, it's just a cute game. All of the characters just exude so much charm, and the Deku Scrubs are an absolute standout for me. There's so much to love about its charming little world that I genuinely enjoy this fun little trip through Hyrule in spite of its issues. Number 4, The Legend of Zelda: Skyward Sword HD. I know this is an HD remaster of a 13-year-old game, but who cares? I'm actually a big Skyward Sword believer. I think the motion control problems and complaints about forced linearity are blown out of proportion just a little bit. I mean, I definitely think that the game should have more locations and you shouldn't have to backtrack and re-fight bosses so much, but I really enjoyed the motion controls. It's just so different from any other games that are out right now. Nintendo really feels like the only developer that's still utilizing motion controls. Even then, it's mostly died out since the craze of the Wii days. The controls inherently make every enemy encounter feel unique, and I think that's something we won't experience for a long time. Maybe at some point VR games will become commonplace, but for now, this feels like an interesting return to a more experimental time. Much like Echoes of Wisdom, the characters are just so amazing. Groose is my favorite Zelda character ever. Watch this video. Skyward Sword has my favorite version of Zelda in the series, and Girahim is a phenomenal villain. The art style is gorgeous and the music matches it perfectly. The dungeons are some of the best in the series, and most of the game was a joy to experience, even though I played it many times right after it released, all the way back in 2011. Number 3, Persona 3 Reload. Crazy to think that a remake of a game can change my view of it so drastically. I did not enjoy Portable when I first played it, but Reload takes that same story and brings everything up to modern standards. It doesn't fix everything. I think there are a lot of things that are just too fundamental to the core of Persona 3 that a remake could never fix. However, it took my least favorite part of the game, the 264 floor slog that is Tartarus, and turned it into a mostly enjoyable experience. I do wish that the male party members would have gotten proper social links. I still don't know why they were excluded from the original, but the linked episodes are a suitable replacement for them. Unfortunately, I still think the story has severe pacing issues. Not much happens for a while, and even with some additional scenes, there wasn't really a way for Atlus to change this without drastically altering the game. As we've all come to expect from Atlus, the game looks fantastic. I mean, seriously, the UI contrasts with the mundane social sim elements so well, and it just looks gorgeous. Reload is similar to Episode Aegis in that when it's good, it's fantastic, and when it's bad, it's atrocious. Luckily, those bad moments are much less frequent, and the good moments much more plentiful. Number 2, and this might surprise some people, Palworld. This is a game I literally knew nothing about until it released, and I saw things about it on Reddit. It looked amazing. I mean, Minecraft mixed with Breath of the Wild, mixed with Pokemon, and gun?
For his neutral special, he wields a gun.
I know it's still in early access or whatever, but let's be honest, that doesn't mean much anymore now. Plus, it's only $30 on Steam. I've got 80 hours in the game, and that was only playing solo. I'd love to play this game consistently with a group, but alas, here I am. The pals are all so much fun, they ooze with personality. Like, come on, you can't tell me you didn't laugh when you first saw Depresso, which I'm now learning was apparently named by the community. And look at my big boy Chillet, he's just so cute! I haven't even jumped back in after the last couple updates because I've been so busy with other games and projects. There are some aspects that could really use some overhauls, at least these weren't updated the last time I played. There are some things that can get a bit grindy. As with any survival game, progression is quick to start, but eventually slows down. I feel that it slows just too much towards the end game. Plus, the base building could really use some tweaks. It felt so clunky when I was trying to build my own base, and I just eventually gave up. Pocket Pair really seems like an upstanding developer, and I love that they seem to truly love their jobs and this game. It shows. Palworld is like the Pokemon game I've always wanted. Number 1, the best game I've played this year is Ori and the Will of the Wisps. This game is the perfect sequel. I loved the first Ori game. It was one of the best games I've ever played at the time, so naturally, I waited and waited and waited to finally play its sequel. When I did get around to it this year, I felt so dumb. It was everything that the first game was and so much more. It's so rare that we get a game sequel that is clearly superior to its predecessor. The gameplay is so much more dynamic with all the new combat skills, and the movement feels even more fluid than the first game, which is saying a lot because Ori and the Blind Forest is one of the best controlling games I've ever played. It's the perfect blend of fast-paced and methodical, patient platforming. Not to mention the boss fights are incredible. The world and soundtrack are as beautiful as the first game, but the story, oh my god, the story! It's legitimately one of the best I've seen. It's so beautiful and thematically consistent with the series. And all of this takes place over the course of a 10-hour game. It's so unbelievably distilled into a condensed experience that you can't get bored. The game is always moving on to the next big idea, the next mechanic, the next story beat, the next area, the next dungeon. You rarely have time to catch your breath. But the few times you do are times of peaceful introspection as you gaze upon the characters you've helped and reflect along the amazing journey you've gone through. Another year, another list of games. It's been a fun year of games. In spite of all of the crazy layoffs, we've been eating well this year. And god, I didn't even get to some of the heavy hitters like Elden Ring too. It always seems like there's too many games and not enough time. I guess that's the curse of being an adult. I have the money to buy games, but not the time. Even so, the games that I do get around to, I generally enjoy. I typically only buy games that I know I'll like. Really, the only game that made the list which I didn't enjoy was Episode Aegis. But even still, there were some genuinely fantastic moments in that DLC. I'm excited for 2025. I think that the Switch 2, or whatever it'll be called, will bring some fantastic exclusives to it, and Microsoft and Sony will continue to bring their games to PC for me to enjoy. I've got another project in the works. I'll be playing Persona 3 Reload in real time. If you haven't heard for whatever reason, I'm currently playing through Persona 5 Royal in real time on my second channel, Oro Plays. So if you're interested in joining towards the end of the journey, go check it out. Anyway, I've enjoyed this past year of gaming, and I've of course enjoyed making content. Regardless of my audience size, thank you all so much for watching, and have a very happy new year.